Today, I'm going to be predicting the 2024-2025 NFL season. I will be going over division rankings, playoff predictions, who wins the Super Bowl, and lastly, award winners. Let's get into it. Starting off in the NFC North, I have the Minnesota Vikings coming in last. Reason being, they're just in too tough of a division to compete with names like the Packers, the Lions, and maybe the Bears. And on top of that, J.J. McCarthy, their quarterback they just drafted, is out for the season, which sucks. So now they're going to have to rely on solely Justin Jefferson to make them a good team. And I just think that is going to be very hard to accomplish. In third in the division, I have the Chicago Bears. Reason being, it's just too tough of a division to compete for, and I think the Bears are not there yet. Caleb Williams is definitely looking promising, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does good in the future. And maybe he does this season, but right now it is just too early to make that call, so I have them third. Who I think will come second in the division is definitely a tough choice, but I got the Green Bay Packers, mostly because it's going to be hard to bet against the Detroit Lions not winning the division. We see how dominant of a team they are, but Green Bay is still equally as good, and they can easily win second in their division if they play to their strengths. And with that, it only makes sense. I have the Detroit Lions finishing first in their division. It only makes sense. They went to the NFC Championship last season, and we just saw how dominant the Lions can be. They are definitely a threat in the NFC and could give other teams a run for their money to make Super Bowl this year. The next division up is the NFC East. Now in last place, I have the New York Giants. Reason being, they have been very awful these past few seasons. Now their defense has gotten way better, but their offense is at an all-time low. They did grab Malik Nabers, but I don't know how much he will impact that offense. The third in the division, I have the Washington Commanders. Nothing special about them too much. They did get a new coach, and they did draft Jaden Daniels, but I still think there's much, much more time for this team to need to grow, and that's why I have them third. I think the Dallas Cowboys will finish second in their division. Now, there is this thing about the NFC East that no one's been a consistent division champion for like a long amount of time. So I don't think Dallas will win it this year. And instead, I got Philly. And I think Dallas is just going to have an off year. You know, they seem to be a good team every year, but something about them this year just makes me feel like they're going to be off. But I think they're still good enough to win second in their division. And in first, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. Pretty simple. They're a very dominant team, and on paper, they are one of the best rosters in the NFL. They just picked up Saquon Barkley, and just recently, they also got one of their division rivals players in Jahan Dotson. I think this team should be a very good team this year, so I got them winning the division, of course. Next up, we have the NFC South, and I think in last place will again be Carolina. Nothing against them. I do think they will have a better season this year than they did last year, mostly because they have a new head coach, and Bryce Young will be able to work better under his name. And on top of that, they have a much, much more improved and younger roster. And yes, they did lose Brian Burns, but I still think they will perform better than they did last year, but not good enough to be any better than fourth in their division. And in third, I have the New Orleans Saints. Now, honestly, I could see a world where they do finish last in their division, but I will give them a little bit of an up over the Panthers, mainly because they did get Spencer Rattler, which might just be better than Derek Carr, and they improved their defense a lot, getting the additions of Chase Young and drafting Kool-Aid McKinstry. So I think their defense is going to have a huge help in them being third in their division. But again, that is as high as they go. And in second in their division, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I think they will not be as good as they were last year, and maybe a lot of people agree with me on this, and maybe a lot of people don't. It's fine, honestly. I do think they will not be as good, and mostly because of Baker Mayfield. I don't think he will keep up with the success he's been seeing this past season, and honestly, I don't see anything outside of what happened last season happening again this year, so they're second. And first in the NFC South, I have the Atlanta Falcons, who I think every year have just not been the best, but they finally have the quarterback to piece things together in Kirk Cousins, even though he was very expensive to get. And if he gets injured, they still have Michael Penix as the backup, which I think I might be the only person that actually likes that pick. I think it'll work out great for them. Hopefully, assuming he gets snaps, and Bijan Robinson is Bijan Robinson, and the offense finally has a quarterback that can throw to them. And their defense isn't that bad either. They just added Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons to the defense, making them increase rapidly. So I think they're going to win the division this year. And lastly, for the NFC, we have the NFC West. And in last place, I have the Arizona Cardinals. Now, don't get me wrong, Kyler Murray is back, and I think he will do good. And I think they will have a better season than last year. Obviously, getting the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. will be severely great for them, but they are not that dominant compared to the rest of their division. So I have them in last for their division. In third, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Now, honestly, they have a great team on paper. It's just their quarterback has to be determined to be better. Geno Smith is not the quarterback of the future, so it's going to have a rough season for them if they can't get a better quarterback. But besides that, I think they will end up third in their division just because the other teams ahead of them are just way better. In second in the division, I have the Los Angeles Rams. Reason being, they were a pretty good team last year, but nothing special about them. Now, Puka Nacua is going to be a great receiver for them to have, but Cooper Kupp is coming back from injury, or at least he's getting a full season healthy, so it's going to be harder to split the reps between the two of them. But they also have Kyren Williams, who is a very, very promising running back of the future. They did lose Aaron Donald, which is going to be a huge loss for them, but they did somewhat make it up drafting Jared Verse. So only time will tell how this team works out. And lastly, for the NFC, we have the San Francisco 49ers. This is probably the safest pick of the whole video. Reason being, the Niners on paper are the best team in the league, no question about it. It's just a matter of when they will actually finally win a Super Bowl. Now, they have a struggle nowadays with the money problems. A lot of their players on this team are expensive, but I think this team will have a reason to show why they are as expensive as they are, taking home the 1 seed in the whole NFC, being the head of their division, and probably making Super Bowl this year. Going straight on into it, we have the AFC North. Now, this will probably be the hardest prediction I have to make throughout the video. And in last place, I have the Cleveland Browns. Now, obviously, that isn't the hardest prediction to make. I do think they are just in too tough of a division to compete with, and I just think they'll just end up in last. And in third place, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, nothing against them, but same story. They are just not on the same level as the two teams ahead of them. And especially when they have a quarterback position battle they have to fight between Russell and Justin Fields, I think it's going to be getting into their heads, but their defense is still good. But yeah, they just cannot compete with the other teams ahead of them. Now, this is a very tough decision I have to make, but yes, I do have the Baltimore Ravens coming second in the division. Now, a lot of people will probably disagree with me on that take, just because obviously they were the 1 seed last year, and now they have a 2-time MVP Lamar, and on top of that, they do have Derrick Henry, which is a great duo for the run game. It's just, I don't know what it is. I think they are going to be very dominant, but I think the team ahead of them will just prove why they are the biggest threat in the AFC, and it was a tough decision to make, but I had to do it. And in first, with all these other teams out, it only makes sense. I have the Bengals number 1 in the AFC North. Like I said, it's a very tough decision between them and the Ravens. It's just a healthy Joe Burrow is a great Joe Burrow, and I think they will be the biggest threat in the AFC, potentially even going to the Super Bowl. So it was a tough decision to make between the two teams, but I think the Bengals will have a better season. The next division up, we have the AFC East. Now, I think for last place, it's a no-brainer. It will be the New England Patriots. They just aren't looking good this year. They lost everything, and, they haven't seen success since Brady, so it's only fair, because he won so much with them. and I think they will be last in their division. And third in the division, I have the Buffalo Bills. Pretty much maybe a shocker to people, maybe not. The Buffalo Bills this year lost a lot of assets on their defense and offense, and it's going to take more than just Josh Allen to get them high into the playoffs and high in their division. So I think for now, I have them ranked third. The Miami Dolphins I have ranked second in the division. Reason being is they are a good team, but they still have a lot of flaws in them. They did lose some defensive assets, and their offense, yes, it may be good, but it still hasn't moved me yet. And I think the team I have ranked above them will have the better team overall. So for now, I have them ranked as the second in their division. Yes, I do have the New York Jets ranked first in their division of the AFC East. I think they will be very good this year with a good, hopefully healthy Aaron Rodgers, and that offense is stacked, and all that team needed was a quarterback. And if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, that is exactly what they will be getting and more. And their defense, it's not crazy, it's pretty good, but also, with Hassan Reddick going on, it might be a struggle, but I think they'll still do very good things this season, and I think they'll be the one seed in their division. Yeah. The next division up is the AFC South, and in last place, I do have the Tennessee Titans, and I just feel like right now they're not in a good spot to be successful. They lost their biggest asset in Derrick Henry, and he's now gone. And their offense now has just Calvin Ridley, D Hop, which are, yeah, good receivers, but they are very old receivers, and they don't play like they used to. Will Levis, I think Will Levis will be a good quarterback, but only time will tell with a team like that. So they're going to need to do a whole lot of work if they expect to be a higher rank than this. The Jaguars I have ranked third, and honestly, it's between them and the Colts for this third and second spot. I think both teams could really go back and forth, especially because I do think Trevor Lawrence could be good. Now, yes, people look at him very overrated, but he has shown he has been good in a lot of times, and they helped their receiving core. Their defense is pretty much the same. And I think, yes, they will have a huge downgrade from last season and they will end up third. But maybe, just maybe, they could get higher in their division if Trevor Lawrence plays very well. The Indianapolis Colts are in the same situation as the Jaguars. I feel like both teams could really fight for that second and third spot, but I do think the Colts will be slightly better because I believe more in Anthony Richardson healthy than I do in Trevor Lawrence, and the offense, in theory, should be better than the Jags, as well as their defense. So just by default of on paper stats, I think the Colts will be better than the Jaguars this season. And that leaves the Texans, and it's pretty much a no brainer why they are probably going to win their division. They have CJ Stroud, who is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now as a rookie, and I think he will continue to be dominant. Now, he has Stephon Diggs, which is going to definitely help that receiving core, and their defense has only gotten stronger, so I don't see how this team isn't a threat in the AFC, and I feel like it is a no brainer that they will be the face of their division. And now this just leaves us with the AFC West. And in last place, I have the Denver Broncos. Now, it sucks for them because I do think Bo Nix could be good, but that team just sucks. They don't really have much going on for them. They have great individual players in like Pat Surtain, Cortland Sutton, and like I said, Bo Nix could be good. But honestly, this team was having a rough season last season, and so I just don't feel like they will be any much of a threat in the AFC and in the whole league. In third, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, honestly, I hope they have good success because honestly, they had a rough season last season, having to rely on Jimmy Garoppolo and then their old coach. It's just not looking good for them. And so now they have a new head coach in Antonio Pierce. And hopefully, in Brock Bowers, he can be a good tight end for them. It's just their quarterback problem is their biggest problem, and I feel like that can affect them severely going into the season, and I have them ranked third. And in second, I have probably the most debatable take I've had this whole video. I have the Kansas City Chiefs ending up second in their division. I feel like they are, yes, a good team. Obviously, they've won 3 Super Bowls with Mahomes, so it's hard to bet against them. But even though everyone says this is the best roster Mahomes has had since Tyreek Hill, it is I don't believe in it, I don't think it will be good. I think they are struggling, and not because they're bad, but because the AFC is just such a dominant league. So I don't think they will have as good of a season. But, it's rare to say you want to bet against Mahomes because he always ends up winning. And with that, that leaves one team left in the AFC West, and that's the Chargers. I believe they will win their division. Now, why is probably because of Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh has shown that he is a great coach. He coached in the NFL before and took his team to the Super Bowl. And now he's on a roster with a good quarterback in Justin Herbert. And yes, their run game isn't as scary as it would be preferred, but he's still a great coach. That defense can be worked on, and I think they will have the edge over the Chiefs to win that division. And now it's time for me to go into my playoff seeding. I will be listing off all 7 teams I think will make it in the AFC, and then as well as the NFC. From there, I will then predict the 2 teams in the AFC and NFC championships, and then lastly, the final 2 teams that make Super Bowl, and obviously who wins out of those 2. So starting off in the AFC at the 7th seed, I have the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I think Anthony Richardson will be healthy this season, and it was between them or the Dolphins, but I think the Colts will have the better odds of getting the 7th seed. In the 6th seed, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. Reason being, I think every year they aren't statistically the best team, but always end up winning the Super Bowl due to obviously having Patrick Mahomes. But I think this will be the first year where they finally experience a little bit of reality and where they don't do it and they end up in the 6th seed, and just because the AFC is that difficult. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're still a scary playoff team like they always have been. I have the Ravens at the 5th seed. Main reason is because, yes, the Bengals are going to be winning their division, so that forces the Ravens not to be a top 4 seed, which is fine because they're still a great team, and I think they'll do just fine no matter what their seed is. In the 4th seed, I have the Chargers, and I feel like because I have them ranked as a division winner, yes, obviously they're going to be a top 4 seed, but I feel like they are the least threatening so far out of the 4 division winners, so I have them ranked 4th. And I sadly have the Houston Texans ranked 3rd. Reason being is not in a bad way, but I feel like the Houston Texans are in the best position right now out of all the AFC teams. AFC is a tough division, but I feel like the Houston Texans are young and they're still processing things. They can easily become a Super Bowl team either this year or next, but I feel like the 2 teams I have ahead of them just need it more, so I have them ranked 3rd. And in second, I have the New York Jets. Like I said about the Texans, it just means more for the Jets to get this Super Bowl because the Texans, they have years on them of growth and they can easily become a Super Bowl team. The Jets, with Aaron Rodgers being questionable with his age, it is a win now mode for them. So they have to get this win now. And I think they will be very close to getting it. I think the Cincinnati Bengals will finish first in the whole AFC. I feel as if Joe Burrow, when healthy, is a Super Bowl quarterback. And I feel like because he's been hurt a lot and because his offensive line sucks, people really don't give him the credit. But it feels like he should be. I feel like he is a much better quarterback than players like Josh Allen. And with Lamar Jackson, it's a toss-up in terms of what kind of offense you want. And I think it will really be shown why Joe Burrow deserves more credit on his name. He will be able to lead this offense and team in general to the 1 seed of the AFC. Now, starting off with the NFC, I have the Chicago Bears in 7th. I feel like even though Caleb Williams is a rookie, I still feel like they have the star power to get them to the playoffs. And from there, we'll just have to see how far they can make it. But I believe they will. And in 6th, I have the Los Angeles Rams. I feel like even though they lost an important piece in Aaron Donald and Matt Stafford is still getting old, they're still a good team, and we can see more from Puka Nacua, and we can see more from Kyron Williams, and Cooper Kupp is going to be fully healthy, hopefully, going into the season, especially with the addition of Jared Verse. I think their defense will be good enough, and their offense is good enough to make the playoffs. I think the Green Bay Packers will finish fifth in the playoffs, and I think reason being is they are such a dominant team with how people say they are, and we saw their playoff run last season went really well. So honestly, they probably will make playoffs again, and they might go far in it. And with the Packers being in the playoffs this year, for my predictions, that means three teams from the NFC North all make playoffs: the Packers, the Bears, and lastly the Lions, who won the division, which is just goes to show how scary the NFC North really is. I think the Atlanta Falcons will finish fourth in the playoffs because due to their winning of the division of the NFC South, I feel as if they will make it fourth because the Detroit Lions, San Francisco 49ers, and now making it clear that it is the Eagles just shows that the Falcons are still a good team and still can win the division, but they are not as powerful as those three teams ahead of them, thus ranking them at four. With the final three teams, I think the Philadelphia Eagles will finish third. And I think for this team, on paper, they are such a stacked offense and defense. And honestly, if they all play to their strengths, they could be a higher rank. But their biggest problem is having to solve what the problem is. Is their problem their coach or is it their quarterback? And until they figure that out, I think they will have a struggling time in the playoffs. But during the regular season, they will still be a very dominant team, thus putting them at third. And I do have the Detroit Lions finishing second in playoff seeding for the NFC. I feel as if the team has already been strong last season. We saw what dominant of a performance they were. This is one of the first years they were able to do it and make playoffs and be dominant in over like a lot of years. So this is going to mean a lot to them. And I think they're wanting to go all the way this year. I think this is going to be their push to get there. And their one lack of defense was their biggest problem, and they were able to work on that during the draft, drafting Terry and Arnold. So I think that'll help the secondary a lot, and I think they really are hungry for a win in the NFC, and I think they might go all the way, but we'll only find out whenever it happens. And whenever I said the Lions might go all the way to the Super Bowl, I might disagree with that. I think the team that will be there will be the San Francisco 49ers. A team like them are so dominant, and every position is filled with such great talent. And I feel like every year they have been the best team on paper and statistically. But I think their one problem is that they just can't get it done in the end. They need to win their Super Bowl to feel like they are the team people look at them as. And until they do that, they might start losing that recognition. But I think if anything is to happen, it would be this year where the Niners could go all the way. And I think they do. And I'll tell you now, whoever I think will win the Super Bowl. Now, getting into our NFC Championship predictions and AFC Championship predictions, I have, starting off with the AFC, I have the Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals making the AFC Championship game. Reason being, both teams this season especially have something to prove, especially with the quarterbacks on each team. I think for starters, Aaron Rodgers, he wants to get his revenge. Only playing 4 snaps last season, it wasn't enough for him, obviously due to injury. He wants to feel a win again, and I think he's going to be able to take this Jets team all the way to the AFC Championship. And it's going to be a tough matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I do end up thinking the Cincinnati Bengals will defeat the Jets. Reason being, the Bengals have a great quarterback in Joe Burrow, and yes, he has been injured a lot throughout the past seasons, but you also got to blame his offensive line for those reasons. I do think a healthy Joe Burrow will take this Bengals offense to the Super Bowl, and reason being, Joe Burrow, when he has been healthy, has proven to take his team to the Super Bowl, and he is a very dominant quarterback, and I think this season people will start to remember who one of the best quarterbacks in the league really is in Joe Burrow. And next up for our NFC Championship game, I have the Detroit Lions and San Francisco 49ers. Like I said, with the reasoning behind it, I have the Detroit Lions and Niners as two of the toughest teams in the NFC, and it only makes sense that both of them run it back like they did last season. Pretty much nothing to be said here. They are the two most dominant teams in the NFC, and they will see each other again in the NFC Championship. Only difference this time, well, no difference this time because I still have the San Francisco 49ers going to the Super Bowl. Now, probably a lot of people agree, maybe a lot of people disagree on that. I'm just saying they will because they have more, I guess not. They don't have a lot to fight for in terms of the Lions because Lions haven't made it this far in so long. But the Niners are also in a situation where everyone is so expensive, and next year they might and probably will be under the salary cap. So it's Super Bowl or bust this year for the San Francisco 49ers. So I think they need this year to get to the Super Bowl. Now that we have our Super Bowl stage set, it's time for me to predict who will be holding up the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the NFL season. On one side, in the AFC, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who have never won a Super Bowl ever, but could this be their year? On the other side, in the NFC, we have debatably one of the most historic franchises in NFL history in the San Francisco 49ers. And who I think will win it this year will be the San Francisco 49ers. Now, reason being is they are still a great team, and this matchup is going to feed families. But I feel like as of right now, the Niners have a lot of pressure on them. Instead of having the Bengals be like, oh, we can do this again next year, the Niners are in a situation where they are in a win now mode because it's either Super Bowl or bust for them. And next year, if all of this is accurate with the Niners making Super Bowl, Brock Purdy will have to get paid a ton of money, forcing the team to lose tons of assets on that offense and defense, both combined. So I think as of right now, they have more pressure on them than the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think they will live up to that pressure, taking home the Lombardi Trophy. Now that we have our Super Bowl and playoffs out of the way, it's time to predict the NFL award winners. Starting off with the MVP, I think the MVP this year will be Joe Burrow. He has managed to take them to the Super Bowl this year. If everything goes as I say, he has taken them to a Super Bowl, and he has just put up a dominant performance during the regular season, and I think he will take home the MVP this year. And for Offensive Player of the Year, I have once again Christian McCaffrey. I think he will two-peat it this year. He is just such a dominant player. And then on the addition of the Niners, that scheme for him just fits so perfectly with his style of play. And I think he's going to just go back to back and pretty safe pick. But he is also one of the best, if not the best running backs in the league right now. And obviously, with a team like a Super Bowl contender and winner in the San Francisco 49ers, I feel like he has definitely the skill set and assets to get him Offensive Player of the Year this year. For my Defensive Player of the Year, I have Sauce Gardner. This is probably the weirdest pick I will be making out of all the awards, just because it's so random to have a corner win Defensive Player of the Year, when recently and a lot lately we've had nothing but edge rushers win Defensive Player of the Year. But I think this year edge rushers will still be as very dominant as they've always been. But I feel like a cornerback is going to step up this year and win the award. And what better than Sauce Gardner? He has a team in the Jets, and that team is very good. And I think he's going to be able to excel on that team, pushing himself into the candidate for Defensive Player of the Year and to win it. And I have him winning Defensive Player of the Year. Next up, Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's pretty easy choice for me. I have Caleb Williams, especially if he does make playoffs. I think it's going to be a no-brainer that it will be him. And I think even alone, stat-wise, he will win it. But making playoffs will definitely give him a push to win it even quicker and even more, more dominant in a way. Next up, for Defensive Player of the Year, I have Jared Verse. Reason being, I could have gone a lot of names here, but I feel like Jared Verse is definitely going to be good this year. I know people are still upset about the setback of, oh, he's living in Aaron Donald's shadow now that Aaron Donald is retired, but I think Jared Verse will still prove to be a good defensive player, and I think he's going to be filling those shoes quite well for Aaron Donald. I'm not saying he will be Aaron Donald, but I'm saying he will have this team's defense under control. And lastly, we have Comeback Player of the Year, and I think it will be Aaron Rodgers. quite literally because he came back from a torn Achilles and only playing 4 snaps last season, and he's going to lead his team to the AFC Championship game. That's going to be pretty good for a good old comeback player of the year. Now, I'm going to be honest. Honestly, you could probably swap Aaron Rodgers and Joe Burrow if you'd prefer for MVP and comeback player of the year. Both of them had horrible seasons last season, and I think both teams making AFC Championship will show they're both worthy of comeback player of the year and MVP. So if you want to swap those two, 100%, you can do so. Now, that's going to be it for the video. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I had such a blast making it for my first ever video, and I hope you enjoyed. If you have different opinions and thoughts on your season predictions, leave it down in the comments below, as well as ideas for future videos. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Gabe Danger. Thank you so much. Bye.